As many of you have probably noticed over time, when it comes to a lot of these Skylanders videos, I almost always play background footage of a Skylanders game over what I'm usually talking about that day. But if you've been here for a while, you probably noticed that I mostly play Skylanders Swap Force. Now, there's two reasons why I do this. Firstly, I grew up with Skylanders Swap Force, and secondly, it's the game that I enjoy the most. But because I played this game for a combined total of 4 years, I've noticed and learned a lot of stuff. Now, I know it's been a hot minute since I made one of these, and it was mainly for two reasons. The first being if I should branch out and talk about the levels from the other Skylanders games, or if I should stick with Swap Force for now. The other reason was because I didn't have access to one of the swap minigames, but since I was able to play it a little while ago, I felt like it was about time I finally talked about the next level in Skylanders Swap Force. Cascade Glades. Funnily enough, I actually had an interesting dilemma with this level specifically since I was struggling to find things to point out, but after playing through it a couple of times, I was able to find tons of stuff I could speculate on. This ranges from small little details that you probably won't care about but can still appreciate, to large aspects that will completely shift how you view this level entirely. So that's the plan for today. We are going to talk about the many little details littered across Cascade Glades. So with that said and done, let's get going. Now, like Mount Cloudbreak, before we can actually discuss the level itself, we first need to talk about the cutscene or cutscenes that precede it. Now, for some minor stuff, you can actually see Glumshanks as part of Chaos' statue before it's revealed soon after, and while his 3 companions polish the statue properly, this Greeble on the scaffolding with the mop is just scrubbing thin air. And speaking of foreshadowing, you can also see the button on Chaos' chair before he twists it to deploy the Evilizer late in the cutscene. But going back to the Greebles, the number of Greebles in this scene is surprisingly consistent, all things considered. Firstly, in this panning shot, we can see 4 Greebles working the upper part of the statue before it suddenly drops to 3 as we pan down to the 5 on the lower level. But before you point out the missing guy on the top level, Mop Greeble is still in the scene, just on the lower level somehow and hanging from his mop. And in the cutscene where Chaos complains about not having enough trolls, we can still see 6 of them in the background still working. But before you can argue that we lost 2, earlier in the cutscene you can see these 2 Greebles using the human sweeper technique going behind the statue. The only time the cutscene is inconsistent is when Chaos uses the Evilizer, where only 5 of them are present and they are all on the upper level. Yes, you can make the argument that the other 3 Greebles are once again out of shot, but in the scene before this one, we can clearly see that one of the upper Greebles slid down Glumshanks' head, while Mop Greeble would have had to climb back up to the second level of the scaffolding. Not to mention that 3 of the 5 Evilized Greebles were grouped together, while in the previous shot, they all couldn't have possibly been there. But I do find it neat that they glow in the cutscene like bulbs when the ball of Evilized energy passes over them. But stepping away from that, we can actually see the monitor that Cassandra calls Chaos on later in the level. And as you can probably see, we might have a couple of problems. Now, I'm probably going to tackle this later on when Cassandra makes her debut, since for her, this is arguably worse, but it's never really clear throughout the game if the pinkish-purple crystals we see across Chaos' lair and others placed in cutscenes are actually made of petrified darkness. I mean, these crystals look extremely similar to that shard of petrified darkness Chaos had in his hand not a minute ago, so if they are the same crystals, and if that's the case, then how long has Chaos really known about petrified darkness? It must have been a while if he was able to bolt it across the rims of his oversized mirror TV thing. But that's pretty much everything I was able to squeeze out of this cutscene. And even though we were able to get a ton of stuff out of this, there is far more to come. Now, going into the second cutscene, nothing of note really happens, at least little detail-wise, until Whiskers descends into Cascade Glades. Now, during this descent, we can actually see multiple sections of the level throughout this scene, but what's really interesting to me is that the coins actually appear at the end of the cutscene, and if this means anything to me, that means that this is an in-game cutscene. For the longest time, I always thought that this was just a pre-rendered cutscene, as in it was rendered outside of the game engine with its own assets, but I was completely wrong. So with that, let's get into the level. Now, even though this beginning area seems rather one note, there's actually plenty of things to discuss here, like the Easter Island statues. Now, even though they barely have an effect on the level, the Easter Island statues pop up all over the place throughout the level, to the point that they actually appear in the fire elemental gate right after your first spark lock. They also are just everywhere too, like I mentioned before, to the point that once you notice one, you're gonna notice like 10 right after. We're also introduced to these binocular minigames in this level as well, which appear periodically throughout the game, and even though it's probably obvious, you can use these to spot later parts of the level, like here where you can spot Totem Trail in the cave entrance leading to Dusty Cavern. Later on into the level, we get to speak with this Gilman right here, who is actually Snagglescale, the Gilman that we get to see later in Mudwater Hollow, and because of these appearances and a few other things I'll discuss in that video, it makes me think that Mudwater Hollow and Cascade Glades are extremely close to each other. Also, at the ledge on the start of the path towards Countdown Soul Gem, there's actually a Gobblepod just hanging out over here, and on the path itself, outside of even more Easter Island statues, which consists of most of the island, we also get to see this angrier statue right here, which makes an appearance at the end of the level. But going back to the main path, and after you find a cluster of Greeble blunderbusses, you'll encounter these living blocks again, and even though they technically make their first appearance at the beginning of the level, these guys actually have ears on the side of their heads. Now, this makes me think that these were actually made to resemble monkeys, and even though it seems far-fetched at the moment, it will all make sense by the end of the level, and trust me, it is going to be unhinged. After using the jump pad, you're met by another Gilman, this time Pollywog, which sounds extremely familiar to me, but maybe post-recording Neon could find out where else he appears, like he did for the volcano hat, I don't know. This level is also where power pods begin making appearances within levels, this one being right next to the bounce zone here, which is also the first time those specific zones appear as well. But let's take a step back and turn our attention to the cave that's to the left of both of them. Now, the only thing I can really go in depth on is this lower path right here that will take you to Slobbertooth's Soul Gem, since there's a trick I've learned over the years. Now, the game expects you to get on the platform, wait for it to lower, and then start parkouring from there. But if you want to save a bit of time, you can actually skip the floating stone and the one right after just by jumping onto the furthest one away. Anywho, we once again don't get to see anything, at least of note, until we get to the next binocular, where we can actually peek over the ledge of the platform, and we not only get to see portions of the Undead Gate, but we also get to see the beginning and end portions of the Fire Gate as well, which makes me appreciate the interconnectivity of this level. But before we get to that, let's talk about the Gobblepods one more time. Now, after you do some puzzles and take this bounce pad, you are blocked by a group of Greebles, but interestingly enough, the Greeble Ironclads can actually be eaten by the Gobblepods, even if they have their shields up, which actually makes me think that they can eat any enemy in the game, but there's no real evidence for that. They also can shoot their roots out from the ground to knock enemies up into the air, but I've never really seen that happen that much. Anywho, once we get to the Undead Gate and go inside, we're tasked by a skull on a pike named Scully to get his hat back, and there are two big things I want to bring up. Firstly, the Greeble who took Scully's hat actually taunts you while you fight off his friends, and what's interesting about this is that he actually speaks a language the player can understand.
You can't wear it like me, you can't move it like me, it's my hat now, and your feet are stinky.
This is so significant because this Greeble is one of 3 throughout the mainline game franchise to speak outside of what I can only assume to be a different language. The other thing I wanted to talk about was this specific binocular, since you can actually see the area where you meet Snagglescale, and funnily enough, Snagglescale is still there. But after more traversing, we reach this final arena area with the counselors and the chiefess, and once you battle your way through the arena and reach them, you find her and the counselors inside the mouth of a stone monkey. That's right, all of the stone structures in this level, at least the statues, are very likely to be connected to the stone monkey in structures from Rampant Ruins. And the reason why this is such a big deal to me is because the stone monkey is a guardian of the graveyards in Rampant Ruins. Most importantly, the Archean graveyards. If we take this all at face value and go off the assumption that the stone monkey from Rampant Ruins isn't the only one, which is likely to be true since we can spot some in the Temple of Argus map and Superchargers, this might mean that this entire level may have been, or was originally supposed to be, a graveyard for Archean robots. And if it actually was at one point in time, they may still be buried under Cascade Glades or finally destroyed beyond repair. Yes, the stone monkey here looks more like a statue than the other stone monkey from Rampant Ruins, but it's a possibility that this area was so inactive that this stone monkey literally became a stone monkey. But I will admit, this theory is rather flimsy since the arms look completely different and the markings are gone. But once again, the markings could have eroded off or been covered in dirt since there's vegetation growing across it, and the head looks the exact same to the stone monkey in rampant ruin, so the theory is somewhat plausible. This is one of the big reasons why I started this series way back then. Looking deeper into these levels just breathes so much life back into them. But with that, let's wrap things up. Going to the cutscene where Tess and Flynn rescue the chiefess, the Greebles that appear in the ambush aren't actually holding the metal swords that we usually see them using. Instead, they are holding these primitive, almost bone-like blades, and this is pretty weird since this isn't a pre-rendered cutscene. So if I had to guess why this was, maybe the length of the blades blocked parts of the body the animators wanted to see, or just messed with another integral part of the animation, maybe some clipping into the floor or something, which forced them to cut it out and make a new model. But going into the next cutscene, there's actually a couple of things I want to point out here as well. The first being that the portal we see in this scene is actually the Swap Force portal. Also, in this cutscene we can see multiple pictures of Chaos hung up all around the room, and we can even spot the statue in the previous cutscene in the background a few times. But with all of that being said and done, that's all the little details I was able to find in this level. Once again, I know it's been a hot minute since I talked about levels like this, so I want you guys to let me know how I did, and if I missed anything, let me know down in the comments section below. But with that being said and done, I would like to thank you all for watching. Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, share this around so I can grow the channel, leave some comments down below to make the algorithm happy, check out Return to Skylands, its Discord, and a bunch of other stuff down in the description below, and I will see you all in the next one.